Wireless LAN Professionals Podcast, episode 199.
Wireless LAN Professionals is a place to educate, inform, encourage, and entertain those involved in wireless LANs. This Wireless LAN Professionals podcast is an audio manifestation of these goals. Our host is a wireless LAN veteran, consultant, designer, and teacher, Keith Parsons. And now, the podcast for wireless LAN professionals by wireless LAN professionals.
Jerry, welcome back to the show. How are you, sir?
Hey, thanks, Matthew. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Well, absolutely. So introduce yourself to those who might not know you, how you're involved in Wi-Fi and this community.
I've gotten quite the reputation as being involved in this whole WLAN Pi project. This has been going on for a couple of years now. But yeah, as far as who I am, Jerry Olla, I'm CWNE number 238. So I've been in the Wi-Fi industry now for a little while. I've been working with this WLAN Pi project for probably about the last 4 years now.
So give us a quick backstory. How did you stumble on this and how the WLAN Pi really ended up taking on a life of its own?
You know, it's closely tied with WLPC, the Wireless LAN Professionals Conference, because that's kind of where it was born out of. We'll say the idea was pitched to Keith. If you know Keith, he likes to tinker and he likes to play with his gadgets and gizmos. So I had kind of come up with this, we'll say kind of Raspberry Pi-ish type device using a different board for different technical reasons. 4 years or so ago, pitched that idea to him of, hey, do you think this would be something useful in the industry? And, saw his eyes light up and kind of geeked out about it.
In fact, that idea was the springboard, which led you into helping us with one of our very first ever deep dives.
Yeah, back then it wasn't even really a deep dive. It was a maker session, and then the deep dive evolved out of that. But yeah, it was some lessons learned through that, but it was a lot of fun, and it was cool to see everybody assembling these things and then building something that was useful to them.
Did the initial idea for the WLAN Pi come about because you were trying to solve a specific problem?
As a wireless engineer going out to different customer sites, needing a way to test the performance of wireless networks. That's where this whole kind of concept spawned from. So the idea was, okay, I have a limited amount of space, needed something that could be powered, basically something that was versatile and small, lightweight, low power, those kind of requirements. And that's where this concept started and then became smaller and lower power and more features over the years.
You presented at WLPC 2020. What were some of the focuses you had in that talk?
A big part of the talk that I gave at WLPC this year was updates on the WLAN Pi project. And one of the things I made sure to call out in the beginning of the project is, even though I'm kind of known to be the WLAN Pi project guy, since it was kind of my idea at the start, there's a ton of other people behind the scenes that are involved in this project now. It's a very community supported project.
And it's not just all programming either. We've got like the 3D printed case as an example.
Yeah, exactly. You don't need to be a hardcore programmer to be involved in this project. You've got people like Mr. Potato Fi, Joel Crane, creating the 3D printed case. He's awesome with that kind of stuff. He's very good at what he does. So yeah, it's pretty cool to see all the different ways the different people in the Wi-Fi community have contributed to the project, whether it be code or, hardware type contributions.
WLANPi.com. What do you find when you go to that website?
Pretty basic website, to be honest. That's where my coding skills really do not shine. If you go to WLANPi.com, you're going to see a pretty minimal website. Probably the biggest thing that you're going to go there for is a link to the downloads of where you can get that WLAN Pi image to put onto that hardware platform. The Neo 2 board that's inside there is what we're kind of building this all on. But there's also some other links there to some user guide type stuff, as well as resellers where you can buy this equipment. One in particular is the Wireless LAN Pro's online store, where you can actually find the ordering link.
So tell us about some of the changes you introduced at WLPC 2020, and if anything has changed since then.
Yeah, there's been a lot of change. Not too much on the image side of things or the software side of things. There's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes, and we can certainly talk about that. What I talked about specifically at WLPC is the updates that really I looked at. From 2019 to 2020. What did we change? What did we add? Those kinds of things. So on the hardware side, we're supporting a lot more Wi-Fi adapters on the WLAN Pi image now. We've got a ton of driver support for all sorts of different USB-based Wi-Fi adapters out there, from Realtek to MediaTek adapters. You can pretty much plug in any adapter on there and it's going to work in some capacity, whether it be just your typical client mode, or we have several adapters now that work in both the monitor mode and packet injection that we need to do a lot of the real fun stuff that the WLAN Pi is built around.
What about the device itself?
The handheld edition, is new since 2019. That's where Joel created that 3D printed case for it that encloses everything, makes it a bit more ruggedized, and gives you a single piece of equipment that houses everything. And on the software side, we've really taken advantage of that OLED display that's on there. You could show the version number of the WLAN Pi image and several other pieces of information on the front panel display there. And then Nigel took that to a whole nother level and actually wrote an entire menu system for that front panel display, and allows you to now drill down into different functions and actually enable and disable different functions of the Linux operating system.
Of the use cases you're hearing about for the WLAN Pi, is there anything that has surprised you?
Yeah, there's all sorts of things that I never really thought we'd be able to do. Jerry, he created multiple utilities for the WLAN Pi. One of them that I found extremely useful is a CDP LLDP neighbor detection utility that basically allows you to plug the WLAN Pi into a port on the wall or a switch port, or take a network cable out of an access point, plug it into the WLAN Pi, and it'll tell you what's on the other end of that cable. It could be hundreds of feet away, and now all of a sudden you know what switch that cable is plugged into, all sorts of information about what's at the other end of that cable. So that can be really helpful for troubleshooting as well as verifying configurations, that kind of thing.
Now, what makes the actual handheld edition different than just the WLAN Pi itself?
Yeah, that's a good point. I suppose I should even just back up a second. For anybody that's listening to this and isn't familiar with the WLAN Pi, what is the WLAN Pi? I mean, at its core, it's a full-blown Linux computer, right? And it's a very super small Linux computer, which means that there's a lot of versatility there. When you've got a Linux operating system like that, kind of sky's the limit to, what your coding skills are. But yeah, to your question about the handheld, device, it's very ideal for, field use, I would say, where you can take this thing out in the field and plug it in wherever you need it.
And what about the Wi-Fi NIC that is in the handheld edition?
Yeah, so the Wi-Fi NIC that's in there is very specific. So that's a specific chipset that we found enables all the different functionalities. We've got some very specific drivers that work with that particular chipset that allow us to have full control over that adapter for, changing the channel, setting monitor mode, doing packet injection, so we can do all the different functionalities. Things like the profiler, for example, that's another utility that's on there that allows you to profile another Wi-Fi device and see what its capabilities are. We're leveraging all those kind of capabilities of doing that packet injection to be able to do that.
So how much of your time on a weekly basis do you spend on the WLAN Pi project?
Well, usually there's a big ramping up as we approach WLPC that more and more of my time gets kind of wrapped up into that. And then I intentionally decompress a little bit after WLPC and try to remove myself from the project a bit, take feedback and things like that on it. But yeah, I really, since WLPC, haven't spent a ton of time with it. I recently, not that long ago, started a new job. And so it's been consuming a fair amount of my time. Still, weekend projects for sure. Weekends are anytime I've got some downtime, that's usually where I'm focusing on it.
If people want to learn more about the WLAN Pi project, do you recommend the website, Twitter? Where would you direct them if they have more questions?
Twitter is a great place to start. We do have a WLAN Pi Twitter handle. So yeah, if you just send a tweet or a DM, whatever your preference is there, to the WLAN Pi Twitter handle. We do also have some pretty active discussion. I would say the most active place is if you're on the Wi-Fi Pros Slack, you can join the channel. There's a WLAN Pi channel in there, and there's a lot of conversation, and that's where a lot of the ideas and contributions and stuff start there. We do have a separate WLAN Pi Slack team for like the people that are involved in the development side of it. So yeah, feel free to reach out on Twitter and can get you connected to any of those channels as well.
So what's the future of the WLAN Pi look like? Any changes we should expect?
Yeah, so since WLPC, there's been the whole coronavirus and COVID-19 caused some issues with the supply chains. The parts themselves, actually, at the time of the recording of this, you can't order the parts themselves. However, thankfully, there are some different resellers out there that we have listed on WLANPi.com where you can buy the kits themselves already pre-assembled. So it is still readily available today, but there is some question of what the future is going to look like as far as the project and the hardware itself.
So really, as of today, we won't know those answers until the world opens back up. If we're going to go to the same equipment or if a new version is coming out. Is that correct?
Yeah. And on that note, that's given us some time to kind of reevaluate things on the development side, where so far to date, we're doing all the development for the Neo 2 board. But seeing this has given us some direction on the future of how we want to develop the image, and we're looking to actually open up the image to run on other hardware platforms. So not just the Neo 2 board, but since a lot of these tools will work on several other single board computers today, you may not have all the functionality like the cool like OLED display with the buttons and stuff that we have with the Neo 2. But if you just need a basic throughput testing server, there's other hardware platforms out there today that this could potentially run on. So we're looking at kind of expanding out, the build process that we use to create the image and make that more scalable to run on other platforms.
Well, very cool. Well, outside of the WLAN Pi, what other devices or technologies are you playing with these days?
There's always something. Now I would say AX. So, with Wi-Fi 6 and AX, that's definitely something I'm keeping a close eye on, which right now the Neo 2, since we don't have any, all the adapters that we use for Wi-Fi related functions on the current WLAN Pi is all USB based. There aren't any USB based 11AX adapters out as it stands today. But there are some different Wi-Fi chips out there that you can buy. So I've been playing around with some different single board computers, more around like the Raspberry Pi size, getting 11AX working on those types of devices. So not the full features as like the WLAN Pi and stuff has, but if you need to play around with 11AX, that's been a fun kind of tinkering project as well.
So for someone who is on the fence or just hasn't ever played with the WLAN Pi before, why would you recommend a wireless LAN professional get a WLAN Pi?
That's a really good question. I would say, for anybody that's looking to do network performance testing in a small package, that's really what this thing excels at. But there's a lot of other functionality now. I would say, if you're just looking for something for like learning Wi-Fi, right? So there's a lot of cool things we can do when it comes to even doing like packet captures with the WLAN Pi. I would say probably the main focus for the WLAN Pi still today is around network performance testing. So if you have an interest in measuring network performance, either like a one-time test or for continuous testing, the WLAN Pi is a great tool to have in your tool belt. If you like to tinker with Linux and do packet captures, those kinds of things, I think this is something that every wireless engineer should have with them.
We've obviously had some great deep dives at WLPC about the WLAN Pi, but outside of that, do you know of anyone putting out any good tutorials or walkthroughs online that you might recommend if someone wanted to take their own deeper dive into the WLAN Pi?
There's been a few different things from the community. There's several different bloggers out there that have blogged about different things on the WLAN Pi. I know Nigel at Wi-Fi Nigel is his Twitter. Nigel Bowden, he's done several YouTube videos now on some of the different functionalities, especially some of the stuff that he's put together. Those have been really helpful. We've been seeing things between blogs and video tutorials being posted. There's a couple of them also linked to on the WLANPi.com on the video section there as well.
So I guess you'd encourage anyone who is experimenting or trying new things with their WLAN Pi to create a blog or video and share it with the community.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, that's another way people can contribute, right? From a community standpoint, you've got the people that are actually doing the coding behind the scenes, but then we can always use help with the documentation piece. We have started writing a user guide for this this. There still needs a good amount more work, but that's available on the WLANPi.com website as well. It's basically kind of a separate project to the project just to document all this kind of stuff.
Absolutely. Well, Jerry, again, thank you for being here. Is there anything we missed or anything you want to add?
No, I appreciate you having me on. Appreciate being able to talk about this kind of stuff at WLPC. And the only thing I would say is, stay tuned to some exciting stuff that is in the works behind the scenes from the development side of the WLAN Pi, and looking forward to bringing that to light in the near future.
Well, very cool. Jerry, thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Wireless LAN Professionals Podcast, the podcast for wireless LAN professionals by wireless LAN professionals. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at Wireless LAN Pros for all the latest news and updates, and also connect directly with Keith on Twitter at Keith R. Parsons. Head over to www.wlanpros.com for this episode's show notes, as well as the latest in all things Wi-Fi.